your humanity is also resistance. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And do not forget me with the passing of time, for I fear this will lead to my ruin. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film All That's Left of You.
How much is left of you today?
About today?
Yeah.
Shahir, 13%.
13%. You've had quite a day.
13%.
It is the winter. We are in the wild wilderness of the winter wonderland at this point. I was trying to find another W word off the top of my head, but I couldn't think of one. You are currently dealing with a leak. Am I not correct?
Yeah, and you were dealing with some water things, plus I had internet issues, plus there's the snow, plus there's our jobs, plus there's our families, plus there's a wedding I'm planning, plus you have a whole bunch of clients, plus I run 2 YouTube channels, plus you have a child.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. Oh, plus I have a dog that had a real rough time at the vet. There's been a lot, but we're here. Topam fam. We're here for you. How are you? I know you can't answer us, but I've been streaming on Twitch, so I'm used to a call and response, and I can't knock it out of my system.
What do people say in response to you when you say, "How are you?"
Good. It's fun. No, they don't say good. Actually, they're getting by or whatever. But the thing I really like asking is like, how was your week or what happened? And then you get these stories like everyone's dealing with shit, right? Like everyone has stuff.
Yeah.
And it's actually really nice to hear the both large and mundane issues that other people are going through, because you're like, oh yeah, that's relatable.
Oh no. Well, I'll give you a little bit of fun news. This week, I in amongst all of that stuff I was volunteered to go and speak to my son's classrooms about filmmaking, which was really, really fun. So I got. Yeah,
awesome.
It was really, really fun. And I had done it before a couple of years ago. And so I didn't, I kind of wanted to let other parents have a turn kind of thing, because you get to go in and talk to the kids. But I was volunteered for it. And then something else happened, which is that another couple of classrooms had no one turning up for it. So I also I was volunteered because I was there. I was volunteered for other classrooms as well to go and talk to, which was fine. And I got to say, 100%. Being a filmmaker with clips to show on a laptop is a complete cheat code when you're talking to kids, because I got to show them, clips from movies. We've at our company, we've done projects with Kai Cenat, Mr. Beast, and, people like that. So the kids will.
You're in.
Oh my God. Yeah. Complete cheat code for this, because I know that the guy that went before me was an investment banker. And
which is so funny, because that dude, like he makes, no pun intended, bank.
That's what I said. So the feedback that I got from my kid and a couple others was like, it didn't even sound like the investment banker liked his job. And I was like, I really just want to point out that investment banker made more money doing that talk than I probably did all of last year.
But that's the difference. There's a real cross section of enjoyment versus profit.
But it was really fun. We talked a lot. I mentioned a lot of stuff that we talk about on this podcast, like what, I kind of got them to think about like, what is a movie? And eventually I gave them the definition of, that Roger Ebert provided, which was, the empathy machine. I also kind of talked to them about like the fact that Ryan Coogler, is a filmmaker that they probably shouldn't know, but some of them have seen Sinners. These are 10-year-old kids, by the way.
Oh, good.
I know. But,
good. What they think?
So, some of the kids are actually quite mature. I know the kids that have watched Sinners, and they're actually very, very bright, like smart, well-rounded
kids. Well, you
kids.
could be bright and smart and
let me
10
tell you,
years old and
one
not
of these
watch
kids
Sinners.
actually dressed up as a character from Sinners for Halloween. And I was like, and not, I'll say this now, I'm blowing up this spot, but they dressed up as Remick, the vampire. And I was like, are we sure about this choice? Like, this is quite a choice you're making here. And are you sure you want to do this?
He better be singing. Like, he better be doing limericks and river dancing.
Yeah. No, I was like, this is quite a choice. I don't want to get into it, but let's okay, go for it. Did
he run around going, say?
The thing that I pointed out to them was that Ryan Coogler, who had just been nominated for 16 Academy Award nominations, one of the the highest nominated films of all time, made this comment that I think I saw this week, but I didn't actually know if they'd said it earlier this week or not. But that Ryan Coogler mentioned that they didn't travel a lot as a kid, but they felt like they saw all parts of all countries because they watched a lot of movies from those countries. So they were talking really about the fact that we talked a lot about the fact that movies are kind of like a passport to other countries that you get to explore, and you can explore in extreme detail. Like the fact that a couple of weeks ago we did Jafar Panahi's film. It was just an accident. It was last week, I believe. And it was like I got to watch 9 films from Iran over the course of 20 years and see like kind of a real topography of Iranian culture through his films. And I was like just explaining to the kids, this is a real opportunity. You can watch movies from all different places. So that was really fun. We also, I wanted to prove the point to them that they could make things really quickly if they wanted to. Me and my son occasionally make films together very, very quickly, and they're ridiculous. One of my favorites is called The Fart Machine, which you have seen.
I have seen.
The Fart Machine is quite a movie. So with the kids, it was chaos, but we filmed a scene from K-Pop Demon Hunters in 10 minutes. And it was...
That's fun.
It was really, really fun. Surprisingly, the kids are really good at instructions. They kind of organize themselves well. I just handed over the phone. One of them shot it, and within a minute, we had a scene from K-Pop Demon Hunters, and it was great.
Which scene?
The scene right at the beginning where they're talking about eating carbs
before the show, before they fight the demons.
For the fans.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
for the fans.
Like a little half-page scene. We filmed it. We talked about it. We showed, and then we showed them the clip, and we were like talking about choices and stuff. It was really fun. If you listen to this podcast and you ever get to talk to kids about making movies, it's a really fun thing to do. I think making movies for kids is a really fun exercise. Just going through the process doesn't have to be good. Doesn't have, you're not trying to make art. You're just trying to get the kids to kind of like organize themselves, think about movies and that sort of thing. And it's a really, really fun activity to do with kids. Gets them thinking, talking. Yeah, it's great.
I'm really happy to hear that. And it's not that I didn't know that sort of existed still, but like when we were coming up, I shot my first stuff on VHS. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing you probably did the same.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So like, and that was hard, like not hard to shoot, but a little bit.
You could
also but we had to get like 3 decks, right? You had to get 3 VCRs or something to try to do any sort of editing, or you do in-camera editing, and it means you shoot in order and all that jazz. And but it's just funny because like I'm always curious about like the meeting of difficult and like passion, right? Like they can do things so much quicker now and so much easier. And I think that like in some ways really instills like a real like, oh, I can go do this to more people than when we were doing it. I feel like a lot of people did bounce off the technical limitations of trying to do stuff and maybe didn't enjoy the process as much, or just didn't have the time or the what's the word I'm looking for? They didn't have access to the things, right?
Yeah. Camera access is a big thing. Certainly when we were coming up. I was lucky when I was in high school. I somehow wrangled my way into a television production course for summer school for a week or something like that, and we got to make things. And yeah, you're right. Some people don't have access to things, but actually, oddly though, I remember making stuff when I was younger as well with a little handy cam that we had at home. Like I remember like shooting a chase sequence in the forest and then sitting it to the Psycho music and being like, oh, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen.
Best.
Yeah.
It's funny. Before I even had a camera, I was doing radio shows. I had a tape recorder.
Oh, right. You were a little Orson Welles.
And I would do, and I would do things with that, and I'd do sort of audio mediums and try to make it seem like it was a full blown, like you're listening to the radio. So like different shows would hit. And different things would happen.
Yeah.
That was sort of my jam before I had act. And my buddy, I still remember, shout out to Dana LaFleur. I'm blowing up his spot. I haven't talked to that kid in like 20, 30 years. His family had a VHS camcorder, so I would go over there and we'd make movies over there.
Yeah. Yes, it is a privilege to have access to a camera, and certainly more kids have access to cameras. But don't want to dispel the idea that, like everyone has access to everything. I think the thing that my son and then his friends that have access to that is of benefit that I'm kind of really acknowledging here is that they have parents that are in the creative industries. Like, so one's a writer, another parent is a writer, another parent, Nick Lowe, who, writes comic books for Marvel. So, they have access.
Oh, we know Nick.
Yeah, exactly. So we have access to people who can help them make things when they want to. I think the downside is that they seem to think that making things is super easy, like really, really easy. And I always think it's a little hard. But like I say, it's not at this age. It's not about the actual output. It is really about just getting the kids together, having some, letting them play. Letting them have fun with it and letting them kind of like make, just make something. It doesn't actually matter what it is. So I would just highly encourage, if you can, try that as an exercise with your kids, if you have kids, or if you know kids, not random kids. People will think you're weird if you walk up to a kid with a
definitely
camera.
Check with
really,
parents.
I'm actually really, this is something, a thing that I'm very particular about, by the way. Like, I take photographs in public. I take, street photography.
Well, you're very popular.
I am very popular. And people will come up to, especially kids will come up to me and ask me to take their photos. Cause I have a big, like a large camera, and I'm always just like, hey, where are your parents? I'm not going to take a photo of you unless your parents are within vicinity of me and they see me and they know what I'm doing. And we have an agreement here that I'm going to take a photo of your kids. I'm also going to give you the photos, especially with kids. I'm just very particular about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very, I don't take photos of other people's kids or kids in general unless I their parents are around and everyone is aware of what's going on, kind of thing. It's just a thing. So don't walk up to random kids and take photos of them is
I think
big
your
advice.
PSA is loud and clear.
Yeah.
I think you've officially made sure you are not liable for any possible infractions of the law.
I'm just saying, make sure the parents know. Make sure. Yeah. Anyway, in that story, I mentioned the fact that Ryan Coogler had been nominated, or his film Sinners had been nominated for a historical 16 Oscar nominations this week. The Oscar nominations are out. I thought it would be fun just for us to maybe just have a couple of little reactions here to some of this information
as a treat.
There are 8, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My apologies.
Yeah, it's 10 now.
Best Picture nominees this week. I'll just go run through them and you just give me a kind of reaction as you see them. The first is Train Dreams, followed by Sinners, Sentimental Value, The Secret Agent, One Battle After Another, Marty Supreme, Hamnet, Frankenstein, F1, and Begonia. We have covered all of those movies bar one, which we will do before the ceremony in March. There's actually there's 3 movies off the Oscars list that I want to cover off before March. But so we've seen all of those. Matt, quick reactions, any thoughts? Where's your head at? What would you put money on? What would you put your heart on?
I think I do think it's either Sinners, Marty Supreme, or One Battle.
It is those
that
three. That
seems to be the safest bet. The rest of them have been great.
Yeah.
All for different reasons. It's funny. Train Dreams was lovely. We talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't think it could deserve it. I don't want it to win. I want Train Dreams to be Train Dreams. I want it to just exist in its space.
Yeah.
Sentimental Value, also a really great film that I feel like you brought it up before. Sometimes movies kind of get lost in a Best Picture win.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like it would do that film like a detriment somehow.
Yeah.
Hamnet is wonderful, but also, for whatever reason, I just don't think it has the drive or the
juice,
the groundswell behind it that the other 3 do.
It did win the Golden Globe.
Yep. And then let's see, we got Frankenstein, F1, and Begonia, all films that I very much enjoyed, but I just would not. I would not say that they're Best Picture. I love that Begonia was nominated for Best Picture. That's dope as hell.
Of those 3, Begonia is the one I would pick as the best of those 3. I think F1, I'm not sure why F1 is in there.
You know why? I think I know why. F1, I think, hits from a emotional quality standpoint based around the very simple structure of that story, I think it hits above its weight class. I think it actually like is more and I think I've always seen it in IMAX. I think the way that it is shot actually like elevates a very cookie cutter story to feel more meaningful and more powerful. A heartbreak feeling good in a place like this. And I think that there's something about the technical aspect of F1 that actually raises the narrative quality of it in a way that I'm not used to seeing with that structure of story. Like, I don't know. You've seen F1?
I've seen it twice.
Okay. Then I guess, I don't know. I kind of get it. I kind of get why it's here. But I don't think it should win.
Yeah, I find that one, I guess maybe that's the most throwback Hollywood, old school not Lawrence of Arabia. What am I trying to say here? Like, it is I guess it's the Rocky of this year. It is the underdog story, although it's just not. It is such a product placement movie that I really struggle with that one. I do like the sort of laid back quality of it, but I find it's like, it really is coasting on a lot of fumes. And
I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much that I've wanted to rewatch it. And I don't, because I'm worried I won't like it as much.
Let me put it to you this way. I watched it in a theater, and then we're trying to find movies for my son to watch that aren't kids movies. And we picked F1 because it felt like a safe bet in terms of it's safe. And that's kind of what I think about it. But I don't think he actually enjoyed it that much. But just going down the line here.
Show him Gran Turismo.
Yeah, I should. Actually, that is the one. Well, we should play it first as well. Look, you're right in that the one movie we haven't seen is Secret Agent, and I'm willing to be surprised by that. We did like his film Bacurau a few years ago. But Sinners, One Battle After Another, Marty Supreme are the kind of front runners right now. Marty Supreme seems to have fallen out. There is this like expose that was written in the California Post, I believe, about the fallout between the Safdies being slightly more salacious. But you can go and search that out if you want to. I have a sneaking suspicion that the groundswell will fall around Sinners, and I feel like I feel like Marty Supreme's is sort of divisive enough, like in terms of like some people really like it, some people don't. One Battle After Another felt like it initially had the groundswell. I think One Battle After Another oddly does not, benefit from a Best Picture win. And I say that because I think its politics are a little murky. It's not clear cut what it's exactly how it plays its politics. Not to say I didn't like it, by the way.
It's not?
I think it's playfulness with like the idea of like the revolution and who's participating within the revolution that it has is a little.
I think the structure's not clear. I think its politics are very clear.
I'm not saying this is a detriment.
The Christmas Adventurers Club?
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. Obviously, white supremacists are not going to, it's not on the side of white supremacists. I think the way it treats particularly African-American revolutionaries in a story about African-American revolutionaries and who get sidelined by, ostensibly a white character looking for his African American. Yeah. I think there's something to the way that plays that could, make it more of a conversation rather than a.
I 1,000% agree, but I know where its politics are.
Yeah,
yeah. That's the part I was disagreeing with. Not that that's a great argument against it. Like I think that's entirely valid.
Yeah. Sorry, I worded that incorrectly, which is not that its politics are in the wrong place. The way it depicts its story could be perceived
right
as I don't know. I love Paul Thomas Anderson. There's nothing more than I would love to see a Paul Thomas Anderson Best Picture win. This is a movie that I really enjoy, but one that I don't think about as much as others of his.
Just rewatched it. Yeah. I did very much enjoy it the second time. Yeah. Jamie hadn't seen it, so we were trying to catch up on Best Picture stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. I think some of the other categories are pretty interesting. Obviously, I'm going to sort of vibe for K-pop Demon Hunters wherever it is.
I think that's the movie of the moment when it comes to music. Yeah.
if Golden doesn't win original song, that's going to be very strange.
I think every Academy voter is thinking who has kids or is like in some way related, like has kids in their vicinity would be like, I cannot not vote for this because I know I will disappoint this child.
Yeah. I think that I was looking at the film editing.
Yeah.
And this is one, for instance, that I've seen every one of them in here. And I really like this because each one of these films, I feel like, handles what an edit is in very different and specific ways. And I don't even know which one is sort of like better than another, but like I can identify things and like why they're here. And that's always really, really fun for me coming from that background.
As far as like if one goes, that is its placement as best edited film makes a whole lot more sense to me than best picture. And all of these movies, for film editing, it's F1, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, Sentimental Value, and Sinners. All of those are complicated, bar F1. All of those are actually complicated movies, like really, really complicated movies, and complicated movies to structure.
Narratively.
Yeah, and complicated to structure as an edit. So I think that's where that's at. And then F1 is a complicated movie from a technical point of view.
Yeah.
So that completely makes sense. Should we just talk about the international feature film before we jump into our international feature film this week, which is the nominees are again, The Secret Agent from Brazil, It Was Just an Accident from France, which we have covered on the show, Sentimental Value from Norway, which we have covered on the show, Surat, which we will cover on the show. Thomas Flight talked very highly about that film, and it has kind of been described as a Euro Mad Max. And the voice of Hind Rajab, which was also nominated from Watermelon Pictures, who distributed this film, the All That's Left of You that we're talking about this week. I would love to make sure that we have seen all three of those before we go into the Oscars that week, so that we have.
What day is the Oscars?
It's March 15th. So we've got a month.
That's a tight one.
Yeah, well, I think we've done 2 of them, so we've just got 3 to go. And
well, then we also still have the one more for Best Picture, so that takes up 4 of our weeks.
Well, the one for Best Picture is The Secret Agent, which is also the same one for Best International Film. So it's
the Secret Agents and the. Yeah. Oh, it is. Sorry, I missed that one. You're right. 3. Oh, okay, that's easier.
Yeah. So we definitely could cover this off before then, and I would love to make that happen. But we are talking about a film that at the time that I asked you to go see it did have a small rollout in New York City, and it was obviously.
I caught the last one.
What's that?
I caught the last one.
No, they've actually brought it back a little bit more since then. There are more screenings of it now.
Well, I caught the last one in round 1.
Yeah. But you went to Kips Bay, right? Like you didn't go to the Angelica Theater? Yeah, there's more screenings of it at an Angelica Theater in New York City if you are around.
But even the Angelica was stopping, unless they started it again, was stopping the same time Kips Bay was.
There are still a few sessions of it to go.
Well, good. Go see it.
Yeah, and it is rolling out. A little bit wider, although I know there is some disappointment of the fact that it didn't get nominated for a Best International Feature Film. I think there was a campaign on it, but it was admittedly a smaller campaign. And, look, Watermelon Pictures had 2 Palestinian films this year, The Voice of Hind Rajab, which today, by the way, as we're recording this, is the anniversary of the death of Hind Rajab, and All That's Left of You. So there were 2 Palestinian films really going for it. And it is a shame that, this is the thing that the part of the Oscars that I don't like, the sort of jockeying that they have for like, well, there can only be one Palestinian film or one story told. Right. But like, the Voice of Hind Rajab is the one that has come out as the international nominee, and whether that wins or not, it's a very strong year with Sentimental Value, and It Was Just an Accident, and The Secret Agent in there as well. But again, at the time that I went and saw this, that I asked you to go see it as well, I would have said very confidently, and I think I still do, that this is my favorite film of the year. And it's a film that I saw at the beginning of the year because we were at the Sundance Film Festival, and I saw it there. And it was the very second film we saw. The first film we saw was not particularly strong, and we were kind of like, ooh, what is Sundance going to be like? And then the second film, Brandon Ripley, Will Tempfer, and myself saw, kind of destroyed us, and we were like, oh my God. And Will Tempfer, who has been to several Sundances, said that might be one of the best films I've seen at any of the Sundances I've ever been to. So it was ranked very highly at that point. I thought about it all year. when the opportunity came to see it again, I absolutely went. I was fortunate enough to go to a screening with Sherry and Dubby in audience doing a Q&A. I asked a question at the Q&A, so I got to chat very briefly.
What was your question?
My question had to do with a very specific scene in the film, which we'll get into.
Okay.
As we go along. But as I say, this is quite possibly my favorite film of the year in terms of the film I've thought about the most, the film that has impacted me the most, the film that has kind of made me think about both what the power of what filmmaking is and the power of storytelling. So could you tell us a little bit about what Sherry and Dubby's film, All That's Left of You, is about?
I sure can, and I'm sure it's going to encapsulate all of the emotion that you just described perfectly from the Internet Movie Database's 2 sentences. They say, quote, after a Palestinian teen gets swept up into a West Bank protest, his mother recounts the family's story of hope, courage, and relentless struggle that led to this fateful moment.
Yes. Have you covered Israel-Palestine on Extra Credits?
We have talked about, we kind of go into it slightly in our Dividing the Middle East series, when the powers sort of went in and just sort of carved things up. That was approximately, I think, 2018, 2019. So it's been a minute.
Okay. So you're talking about when Britain carved up the Middle East after the annexing of the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
So early 1900, late 18th century.
Yeah. So so not this time period per se. We might have touched on it on a one-off. It's so funny, man. Releasing a video a week for 9 years has boiled my brain into what we have done. Right. But I believe, I think Divided the Middle East is the closest that I can remember for a full series. I might be wrong. Email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com if I forgot one of my series. Because I can't hold all the information in my brain at all the time.
Well, I wanted to bring that up just because, on this podcast, we have taken political positions on current affairs from time to time. I noticed, noting that we did an episode around the start of the Black Lives Matter protest with a special episode where we just remained silent for 8 minutes, I believe, in recognition of the death of George Floyd. We are in the midst of civil unraveling in Minnesota right now, which we have not sort of talked about much on this podcast. But, not because we aren't thinking about these things, but because we still temper like what we should talk about on this podcast versus what's going on in the real world. And the Israel-Palestine conflict, which has flared up since October 7th, 2022, I believe, or 23, around the time of the making of this movie, interestingly, is of course one of the war zones of the 21st century, and of course a story that it goes back, as this film depicts, all the way back to the 1940s as well, and if not further than that in terms of the contestation of that region. I want to say just up front, it is an area of history that is so multifaceted and goes back so far. And I want to stress that I am in no way, and not that anyone was thinking this, an expert on these topics, though I have a position on what is going on right now and the way I see things. I am also acutely aware that the history of this region is far more detailed, nuanced, and requires much more than a tertiary, this happened and this happened, therefore this is what I believe. That's it. I definitely have a position on this. And so, and that will be in alignment with the general thrust of this movie in particular.
Sure.
Matt, when I made a big hoo-ha for you to go see this, what did you think of All That's Left of You?
I admittedly, when I went in and I was like, okay, I was super busy that day. It was, I went, I believe in the afternoon. I can't fully remember. It was the only time I could go. And I was like, okay, it's 2.5 hours. Nicole Kidman's not going to come on for like 25 minutes. I was just like, okay, I was like doing, the mental math when your day is very busy, right? Yeah. But by like, minute 10, minute 15 or whatever, I was just like there. Like I was not thinking about all that other stuff. It is a movie that can completely encapsulate you. And it's fun, not fun, but it's funny how, or actually it is fun how you can, no matter how serious and sad and gut wrenching a film can be, how the various methodologies of how it presents a story can really cause a level of intrigue that goes beyond just like this movie fires. I think what I'm trying to say is this movie fires on all cylinders for me.
Right.
I think that it is a excellently told story of a multi-generational, essentially trauma. I think that it portrays all three of those generations in sort of fairly linearly, but also kind of like lets you know what it's doing in a couple interesting ways by sort of jumping around. I believe it's 1948, 1978 and 88, and then 2002 or 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like are the three at least rough time periods that they sort of like hit with this family.
Yeah, it's the Hamid family through three generations.
Yeah, and it I thought that the film was exquisite. It's also something that it's funny for working on a History Channel. I kind of went back afterwards, just sort of trying to brush up as best I could because like you said, the area and its history in a even in a if you take any truncated slice of time around that. It is insane how quickly you get mired in stuff that you did not know and or understand. So it was refreshing to see a essentially slice of life story taking place in those time periods in that place in Jaffa and sort of in the surrounding areas where from specifically, and I'm gonna. How do you pronounce her name? Is it Shireen Dabi?
Yeah.
From Shireen Dabi's sort of perspective, because she's done a lot of interviews and things, and obviously you were at one of the Q&As about how like much of this is sort of pulled from her experience and her family. Specifically, I think there's a scene in Section 2 in the late 70s and 80s when one of the characters is pulled over and has his son with him, and that level of what that does not only to is harassed by the occupiers there, what that does generationally to a family when that is like not just one incident, which totally can, but like a consistent level of everything from slights to grave brutality can what that does to a family and how a family can endure. And this is something, especially with the themes as it gets sort of later into the 2022 section, with the themes of what's the word I'm looking for? Not necessarily like forgiveness, because I don't think that's what this is about. I think it's more of like what a moral code and structure looks like for different people. We'll get into sort of specifics as what I'm talking about as we sort of move into spoilers. But I thought that the questions this movie asked that it kind of answered near the end of it in the more modern sections was a fascinating look at the different ways that people deal with, accept, or reject trauma. And I think this is after last week's film, this feels like almost like another side to that coin. I know we talked a lot about, and it was just an accident, about sort of like revenge versus forgiveness and what that can sort of look like. This is it's that, but it feels like an extra thing. It feels less like this movie presents itself more as those concepts based on an institutional level modeled around a family that we see for 3 generations, where the and not to say there's not personal things here, but where it was just an accident felt like in how all the different ways an individual can deal with this. This felt like a representation with the reach of what happens to this family, felt like a representation of what can happen across generations with that. And I thought that was it was incredibly moving. It was an excellent film. I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah, it's I think it's difficult to quantify into words how much of a classic kind of, every phrase I'm going to use is going to sound in some way diminishing because it's a classic tearjerker. That does not encapsulate the entire tragedy of what has happened in Israel and Palestine and the scale and depth of what war has done to a generation of people, or several generations of people in that area, in that region. But I think what Sharon Debie has done here is quite extraordinary in terms of like encapsulating that in a very, very briskly told tale of one family and its journey from being the original, the inhabitants of a beautiful home in Jaffa with orange groves that were amongst the best in the world, where the Queen herself had got to taste their oranges, to being entirely displaced, moving into refugee camps, living with families, living with related families, distant families, and then having in many ways a diminished life, sort of in the shadow of Israeli occupation afterwards. And the question that I actually asked Sharon Debie had to do with the particular scene where Salam is humiliated in front of his son Noor by Israeli soldiers. And I found that, again, it's actually difficult for me to talk about that because the writing here is so astute in terms of this is actually the moment at which Salam loses his son. This is the moment where Noor goes on a journey that will lead him to the bullet that we see at the beginning of the movie, is from this moment here, because up until this point, he is, a child growing up in occupied Palestine, but he is a child that, has loving parents and can survive this. But up until this moment, and at this moment, he is a child that, it has a misunderstanding of the power dynamics that his father has in this situation. And, his father is, an authority figure. The thing that terrifies me here is that, like, as a dad of a child that age right now, I'm very acutely aware that I am a key authority figure in his life, and I'm a key, how I behave will reflect upon him for him, and how he will reflect upon his kids at some point in future. So I'm very acutely aware of that, and the tragedy in this scene that is so incredible in terms of writing is a distillation of both the humiliation of an entire population of people, i.e. the Palestinians, distilled into the humiliation of a father to his son. And I think that is extraordinary writing. It's so astute. It is not, it is both encapsulating the entire tragedy that dates back to 1948 to now in one particular scene, and it is so aware of how to place that within the centerpiece of the film. So I found, that was actually the question that I asked her about, just in terms of like figuring that out. And she had some amazing stories about how, what she had collected over the years in terms of the kinds of humiliations that she had seen or read about, soldiers inflicting upon people. It was often the end game was the humiliation. It wasn't actually, go paint this wall or anything like that. The end game was to humiliate the people and to, strip them of their humanity and their power. And, in this case, hauntingly, he doesn't strip Salam of his power. Salam is very aware of who he is. He strips him of his power in front of his child. And that will never be recovered. It'll never come back. And so I found that really astonishing. I find the fact that she acts in the film, that Sharon Debie, plays Salam's wife in this film. It's an extraordinary performance for one, but it is also really graciously places the emphasis not on her but on Salam himself. and his journey through this film. I thought it is quite lovely and metatextual that Mohammed Bakri and Salah Bakri and Adam Bakri are the three main players, both, fathers and sons playing each other's fathers and sons. I thought that was wonderful. I wondered about the hubris, the sort of real hubris of placing yourself as the matriarch amongst these incredibly handsome men as their husbands. I thought it was just lovely. It was just a really lovely, and these performances. Mohammed Bakri is a very famous Palestinian actor. He's just, as the elder patriarch of the family who has been himself humiliated as and having his land stolen, is so wonderful. There's a scene in the middle of this movie that I caught in the second viewing where there is just early onset dementia or, memory or something like that kind of settling in. But there's this wonderful scene where he is staring at the photo of his wife who has passed, who we saw at the beginning of the movie. And I don't know what it was about that moment that just caught me off guard the second time around, but I was kind of destroyed by that, just this little glance that he has to the photograph of his wife. There's a sequence in the middle where he visits the doctor and, they joke, he's got an old man sort of sense of humor about his afflictions at this point. Yeah. And his son Salam says, he's starting to forget things. And the doctor just says this beautiful line. It's maybe God is being kind and letting him, allowing him to forget the things that has happened to him. It's, again, just such a beautiful piece of writing. This entire film is just such a beautiful piece of writing. When we saw it at Sundance, we'd just seen The Brutalist, which again is a film that I think is extraordinary. And in the film The Brutalist, there's sort of a very minor narrative thread about the film about the family in that film relocating to Israel. And it's interesting. I found it really compelling and interesting to watch this film alongside that and say, well, this is the other side of that conversation as well, and that's where that sort of conversation about the Israel-Palestine conflict is difficult to distill down for someone like myself who doesn't know, who hasn't spent a lot of time reading about it and doesn't know a lot about it and doesn't want to speak out of turn about it, because I know it is extremely contentious, particularly in the United States, particularly in New York City. But that is not to say I don't have an opinion about it. And this film echoes my sentiments about the devastation of living under occupation, the devastation of having lost their homeland, the devastation of having no right of return to their homeland. Right. And I think, just this movie is such an extraordinary example of dramatizing history in a way that is emotionally resonant. It is not schematic. It doesn't feel schematic, even though it is really identifying key epochs in that transition of time, in that period of history. It's so extraordinary.
The way this movie sort of tells its tale is, I don't want to sound terribly too sort of self-referential here, but it's I think what we kind of strive to do at Extra History. You can teach people dates and events and oh, well, this happened here and this whatever because of X, Y, and Z, and then this person came to power and blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't stick, and that doesn't change sort of hearts and minds about what has happened in the past. What does those things is when you take when you stay true to historical context and fact, but you wrap it in the stories of history. All history is a shared collection of humanity's stories. It's distilling it, so many of them, down into sort of histories are all, you can be subjective based on whatever, but it's taking an infinite number of stories and crunching them down to a very small number of stories. And when you can get that information, the emotional resonance of what came across, I find it the best way to do that is to take it and give it an actual narrative wrapper with characters that either, in this case, I don't believe these people, the characters Hanan or Sharif or Salam or Noor weren't real people, but people went through exactly what they went through. Right.
Yeah.
And so when you can do that, and when you can, we actually did this in our in our American deportation series. We talked about the buses that left people stranded in the desert. And rather than just say like, oh, well, in 1950, whatever, the Bracero program, then they left people to die in the, under the incredible heat in the desert. It's like, no, we talk about a man who the government promised work. And then he went and did what both his government and the American government wanted. And then political winds shifted. He moved there, got married, found people, made a world. And then all of a sudden it's bad. And then he has to leave. And then they don't plan it well. And it's absolutely terrible. And it rips apart families. And then because they don't know what the fuck they're doing, they leave him in the desert. And like you tell that as a story of a actual man because that did happen. When you do things like that, like this film does with their family, the history and the point, I think, of what people should learn and what artists want people to remember shines through so much greater because you're tying it to the strongest learning tool that human beings have, and that is a story. Right? Yeah, that's how we process information the clearest. And I think this movie does it phenomenal. It's what we try to do on my channel. Like it's phenomenal. It's fantastic to watch.
Yeah, and I think, the story of Salim, played by Salah Bakri, is so profoundly beautiful in terms of like his quiet acceptance of the situation that he has been placed in from the point of being a child through to being an old man and, like traveling through Tel Aviv, which was formerly his home. And there's a sort of wonderful line towards the end of it, which is like, he says something along the lines of, I used to think this was the most beautiful place on earth. Now I hate it. It's a sort of like incredible journey. And we haven't touched upon the incredible fact that the sort of central, dilemma of this film, which is written into the title, doesn't really make its way onto the screen as even a possibility until about 3/4 of the way through. And when it does, you suddenly realize what this movie, when Hanan kind of comes on the screen at the beginning of the movie and she says, in order for you to understand what has happened to my son, I need to tell you about his grandfather. And so then we go into a story about his grandfather and about the orange grove and about the house and then their displacement and their life and, this humiliation that happened with Salim and Noor and later, and that led him to that bullet. And then, so that's 3/4 of the movie before an administrator from the hospital that they've been denied access to because they don't have the correct papers for, comes in and says, have you thought about organ donation? And, up until that moment, I have not thought about organ donation. All I've thought about is the sort of the abject humiliation of their son Noor being in that, so it's 1987 or 88, the first Intifada in Palestinian history, which took place, it lasted, as far as I understand, until 1993 with several years of rioting because of, protesting and occupation that they, the fact that the Palestinian people were protesting the occupation at that point. Yeah. And, so all I've been thinking about is the journey that led Noor to that bullet. And then this question of organ donation comes in, and it's almost as if you're watching, I'll use sort of florally language here, but it's almost as though you're watching a flower blossom suddenly. Like you've seen the seed being planted at the beginning of the film, and suddenly this is the moment where that seed blooms into a flower, because this is now really getting into the heart of the story, which is that now we have the intermingling of these two people to the point where their organs are mixed. And Hanan asked this beautiful question to the Israeli recipient of her son's heart: can an organ have a nationality? And it's how profound a thought that is, to think about this idea of a parent whose child has been murdered and whose body's organs are donated to save the children of the people who murdered him.
Well, of the the political group of people, I suppose, not the
colonizing
actual
force that murdered that child.
The society that allowed the colonizing force to do the thing.
Imagine the thought of your child's heart being given to someone, and again, what I think is so beautiful is like, this is a Muslim family, so they go to the masjid and they speak to the imam there in terms of like what is allowed in this situation, like is organ donation allowed? And Salam, just
the dude's like, well, there's two lines of thought on it.
Schools of thought, but like Salam kind of just says this thing is like, but then there's the thing which is that I don't want my son's heart to be in an Israeli body where it could be used to kill more Palestinian children.
Yep.
And like how he's saying a really difficult thing to say out loud, but he says it out loud, and it's the fact that this movie, because I when Sharon Debbie talked about this, she talked about the fact that the inspiration from this was Alejandro Inarritu's film 21 Grams, which features organ donation, and she thought that would be a good idea, and I was like, there's a moment where I was just like, why hasn't anyone thought of dramatizing that before? It's so good. It's such a again, coming back to the humiliation of Solomon Noor, it is such a beautiful encapsulation of the tragedy of the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Well, that's the other thing too. What I really liked about it, about this element of the story, not only that to get there you need to know the whole family, and I think that's very poignant throughout. I think that the two times we see Salim and Hanan sort of dealing with it with the family that receives their son's heart is when they go there when he's still young, when the boy's still young, and the family, even though there's some oddities or some little, like, I won't even call them slights, but just like little jabs or things that happen in that scene that are not great for them.
The family says we've never met Palestinians before. We didn't know what you'd be like.
And it's funny because that highlighted something, specific about all, I mean, I think I could even say like all sort of like racial or cultural hatred it's based in ignorance.
Yeah.
It's based in, you heard stories. I mean, their government has probably told them awful things about, Palestinians and all this other stuff. And so there's a moment there of like what I would consider like slightly a breakthrough and kind of maybe what they would want. Like it seems as if what they've done is taking a high road, cross a cultural divide, and maybe in a small way, like began to heal a very minor fraction of this conflict, right? Of what's been going on, and in a selfless way, right? And then when Hanan meets with the guy when he's older, again, the guy's not outwardly rude, but he is almost kind of flippant about it.
He's unaware of the weight of what has happened to this family that is sitting opposite him, and he is.
Well, she tells him, like, right, yeah. Like, but it carries no weight for him because he
doesn't. For one, fairly, he was a child when this happened. He was the recipient of an organ donation, so does he bear the responsibility for how that organ ended up in his body? He's a child. He does not know that. He's also grew up in a system that has created this, like ongoing occupation. So he is not the primary, he's not sitting there trying to figure out how to make Palestinian lives worse or anything like that. But there's an interesting indifference to his responses that that hope of this sort of moving in a direction because of it is kind of dashed, not in a malicious way, but in a, the institution keeps marching on, and this is not a grand gesture that will change a heart. No, it's not a grand gesture. That's the sort of beauty of the film. I read a negative review of the film, which kind of suggested that was an oddly negative note to end the film in, and one that's not filled with optimism. And I was like, I don't know that there is any more that Hanan's character can say there, except that my son had my son had a good heart, and it's in you now. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do to change the way that is. And, like, obviously she would want her son back if she could have him. But all I can do is tell you my story. And
who's watching this in this movie, teaching all this history and like contextualizing it around a dramatic retelling of what people and families went through, and was like, wow, I really wish it ended on a happy note. Right. Like who looks at that and think that's insane to me?
Well,
that's not what. Yeah.
There was a review that kind of that spoke about ethno-nationalism and its relationship to this movie, and the idea that there was an opportunity for an optimistic note here. But I look, it's not this. I was enamored by this movie from start to finish in a way, like we've talked about on this podcast many times before, which is that if a movie manages to weave a spell over you, you're willing to go wherever its journey will take you. And I was flabbergasted by the journey that this film took me upon. And I think, Dabi or Dabis, apologies if I'm pronouncing the last name incorrectly, kind of just weaves such an incredible spell here. And it's one of those films where you kind of say it's almost novelistic in its approach to story, retelling the history, in that it feels rich and detailed and nuanced. There's so much going on here in the tapestry of it all. I love that Noor, this character who basically is, marched out for the slaughter at the very beginning of the movie, gets to have, gets to have a moment in the story where we understand both that he is a kid who has witnessed his dad's humiliation and sort of has grown up angry because of it. And then also a kid who's like, is a teenager who's not thinking straight, who likes girls and is into graffiti, thinks that there, has conspiracies about the world because of the way that they've been raised and where they are in the world. And, suddenly gets swept up in this first intifada and, pays an ultimate price for it. And the movie is not shy about the indignities that they suffer even after Noor has been shot. Even after he's been shot, there is no facility able to take him where they live. So he's got to be airlifted to Tel Aviv, but they can't get a permit to do that unless they have his papers, which they cannot find. And, in what situation would you be thinking about, where are my son's papers?
And there's some hintage too that you don't know for sure or whatever, but if those barriers didn't exist, he might still be alive.
He might have lived. There might have been time to save him. And then the further indignity of having to then offer up and consider the possibility of saving other people with the organs that remain in their son. It is a series of daunting indignities that this family suffers and humiliations that they suffer with dignity, and they suffer, beautifully, not for our privilege, but for the fact that they are, incredibly strong and have a kind of understanding of the world that is, perhaps their faith gives it to them, perhaps their understanding of culture and history. But, again, so at the end of this movie, Salim gets to see his family home again. And, I think there's so much that's said with silence in this movie in terms of how much was taken from this child, and, again, I know I talk about my kid a lot, but I think about the fact that I acutely aware of the fact that I hold an important place in my son's upbringing and his life going forward and where he will be. And imagining that if that authority or that sort of place in my life is taken away from me through the circumstances around me is mortifying. And this film dramatizes that so beautifully in the midst of really in detail telling a historical war story, through the ages. I think this film is remarkable. I think what this film achieves is incredible. Just some sort of technical things here. Performances are just extraordinary. The writing is incredible. The film was made under extremely difficult circumstances, lower budget. I've watched I had heard of Sherian's first film, America, because we liked the title of it, about a Palestinian family traveling through America, and they call it America. And I watched for this podcast her previous movie, May and Summer, which is a sort of, a much lighter family drama about a family that is, she plays the main character traveling back to Jordan to visit her father. Bill Pullman is her father in that movie. And it's very, I'll say for me personally, it didn't quite resonate or land. I think it's very nice. But it didn't prepare me for how giant a leap between that film and this is. This is amongst, I would say, the greatest films I've seen since we've been doing this podcast. And
so she's been
directing a lot of television. Yeah.
Well, that's right. And the television that she's been directing is kind of prolific.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, she does Ozark, I believe. And
Ozark, Quantico, Little Voices, and then Only Murderers in the Building, which is like
comedy.
Yeah. It's just like she seems like she can do pretty much all of it.
It reminded me a lot of, a movie we did in our first year, Mudbound by Dee Rees. In terms of like, this is a storyteller of immense scope, like a storyteller who can encapsulate immense scope. I say this a lot on this podcast, but when I see a filmmaker who, blows me away like this, I'm like, I'm all in, I'm all in from this point forward. In the case of Dee Rees, I think she's had a little bit of a bumpy career from this point forward, but Mudbound again was such an extraordinary film that very few people saw on Netflix. Go back and listen to our episode about that in 2016, I think. This is on that par for me in terms of like one of the great movies. And this is, I've also, just anyone who's asked me like, what's a great movie? I've just been like, you cannot go wrong watching this. You cannot, maybe you're not in the zone for seeing this. I know I can force you, Matt, to go see the movies like this.
No.
But I was like, but this is the movie.
This is one of the few films in that category of like, oh, Sheer mentioned that we want to do for the podcast, so I'm going to go see it. That it doesn't, it's so good it doesn't force you to need to be in a zone.
Yeah.
Like
once you're in the seat, you're
in the seat, you're there.
Yeah.
And that is not something that happens with many films. Like that there is a special thing to this where I feel like you could show up at this movie in any mood or any place and be sucked in for the 2 hours and 35 minutes, and you are there and you are experiencing it. And it is a time capsule away from your own body.
Yeah.
And that is something that I consider the highest praise for a film, that can, when it can elevate you and move you into a space where you are not, no matter where your mental faculties are at the current time. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this is one of the best movies of the year. I think it's I think if you have not seen it yet and you've been hearing us yammer about it, you absolutely should go check it out, particularly in a theater. Now that Sheer's telling me that it's back, and I didn't see the last screening.
And like we were talking about the Oscar nominations for Best Picture, not Best International Feature. And I think my feeling about Best Picture this year is that whether it's Sinners, One Battle, or Marty Supreme, yeah, fine. It's not a Parasite year where there's clearly one film that was the film, or a Moonlight year where there's clearly one film that's the film. If All That's Left of You had been nominated, I would 100% be like, that's the film. Like, of all those films that were just mentioned before for Best Picture, this is still the film for me. Like, this is, and I would be like, yes, that is the Best Picture of the year, without a doubt. Give it all the flowers, give it all the accolades. Now, and I say that with a sort of tempered, a film shouldn't be a competition or anything. And, I can imagine there is some disappointment at the fact that this doesn't get a nomination at the Academy Awards, but, I just think it's extraordinary and, a film for the ages.
Yeah, I think it seems a little odd, but the politicking of the awards show circuit seems to make sense that you sort of laid out.
Yeah.
I don't really have much to add. I think we've kind of hit it.
I mean, my main goal with this movie, with the podcast, go see like I want people to go see this movie. I want people to like to take some time to see it. Like we've organized screenings. We've organized people to go see this movie, and we've like said we've offered childcare so that they could go see it because it's it's only playing in one theater in the city. But I've like I would wholeheartedly organize screenings of this film. And oddly, the two movies that I've said that I would do that for this year are Sketch, the Seth Worley film, and this, and for very different reasons. But after watching it as well, how I said earlier, we found F1 and we picked that for my son because it was safe. I would show my son this movie because I think it's important for him to watch it. Like I want him to see this movie. And I want him to see both just the power of great storytelling, but the power of like understanding a story that he might not know much about, like as I didn't. And I really want him to watch this movie.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
This has been the only podcast about the film All That Is Left of You. Shahir, when you are not figuring out where the best possible orange groves are, where can folks find you?
You can find me at my local trade fair, picking through mostly rotten fruit at my website, Supernova.com.
We have a whole fruit place here
there is one trade fair in Astoria. I think most people know about it that doesn't have a very good reputation when it comes to fruit.
No, but it's not Supernova. That. The veggie, the produce place, the big old produce market.
That's different. What's the brothers? I forgot the name. Anyway, go to my website, Supernova.com. That's SUVANOVA. Matt, when you are writing fruit reviews on your website, where can people find you?
You can find me not dealing in any rotten tomatoes over at my websites, Extra History and Extra Credits, over on the YouTube machine by now, I believe. We just did a short. Actually, this is pertinent for our show, Shahir.
What's that?
We just did a short. That is a 1 of 10, which means it's the most popular thing we've done in this space in the time. We released it today as of the time of this recording. It has we released this. Let's see. I'm going to tell you what it is afterward.
Yeah,
it has been released for 6 hours. It has 313K reviews, and it is entitled Mel Brooks Beat Nazis. And it is about Mel Brooks's military service and what he did
and his film The Producers.
No, not even.
It doesn't even talk about the producers.
Nope, it just talks about his military service.
Oh wow, okay, fair enough.
And it's a short, but it's excellent. And shout out to Robert Rath who wrote that, and Scott DeWitt who did the art. There's
the current documentary, the Judd Apatow documentary about Mel Brooks, which is on HBO right now. I have not watched it yet, but I am a fan of Mel Brooks. I mean, Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs are two, in my mind, the greatest comedies ever made.
We're doing these series called Hollywood Goes to War. Is basically what we're doing, and so we've done one on a famous Disney singer, like songwriter. Yeah. We did one on Mel Brooks, and actually we have one on Rod Serling coming up soon too.
Creator of the Twilight Zone, right?
Yeah. Which he was in the Philippines. Anyway, it's fascinating stuff. Anyway, so check that out, and then over on credits, I believe by the time this comes out. Over on Nebula, it'll be out. We're doing an episode where it's been 10 years since Extra Credits has discussed the idea of comedy in games. And we talk about how much it has changed in the last 10 years of humor in an interactive medium and what it means today as opposed to back in 2006 or whatever, or 2016. So,
what is the funniest game I've ever played? I'm trying to think about it. I like the two that come to mind are Leisure Suit Larry. And Portal. Those are the two games that come to mind in terms of like comedy.
And both of them use sort of narrative conceits that are very of the times that they did. Anyway, watch that episode when it comes out. It's very, very interesting. That's one's written by Jenner Stieber, who is a phenomenal video essayist, and illustrated by Nick DeWitt. So please go check those out when you can. Next week.
What are we
doing?
We got more movies. I know we've seen 28 Years Later. Well, I've seen 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple.
I have not seen it yet, but that doesn't mean I can't.
Yeah, and again, I would love to cover off all the best pictures and the best international features, which is really three movies from now, before March 15th, which I think is the Oscars, and that'll basically take us through where we could do our best of at that point. Yeah. So lots to see, lots to talk about, lots of movies to watch. watch. Go watch some movies. Go make some movies if you can on your iPhone.
Grab that iPhone. You don't got to worry about a VHS camera. Hell, if you have a VHS camera, go use that. That's harder.
Hell yeah, I know.
You'll like it. You'll like it. All right. Until next week, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.